Good afternoon. Welcome to the final session of our conference. Because this is the final session, we're going to do things just slightly differently. We have two excellent presentations, and in a minute I'll introduce our panelists. But once the presentations are done, we're going to go to Q&A, and then I will just make some final closing remarks after the Q&A. So we'll keep the Q&A brief and to the point, and then we'll go and we'll close the conference. Let me introduce each of our panelists. To my left is Dr. Jawad Al-Kassemi, who's a researcher and analyst, a political scientist, who holds a PhD in political studies and public law from the University of Fez in Morocco. He serves as visiting professor at the same university and is also the vice president of the Takfir Center for Studies and Research. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Introduction. My presentation is will be in Arabic.
In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, may the peace and blessings of God be upon you all. At the outset, I would like to thank Dr. Kamrava for the good organization, and I would like also to thank the Iranian Studies units. And I'm going to try through this paper to be academic more than anything else. So I'm going to tackle the topic, particularly if we take into account the support by Iran to the separatist movement Polisario. And also I would like to concentrate on a particular topic when it comes to my intervention, which is entitled Iran's Proxies, a comparative study of empowerment and deployment strategies between Hezbollah and the Houthis. In light of the transformations that are happening in the Middle East, so we tend to deal with the proxies of Iran as one block. We just call them the proxies of Iran. But my paper tries to look into the right understanding of the strength of Iran, the power of Iran, based on the strategy undertaken by Iran. We're talking about a strategy which is similar to an investment portfolio that has a number of assets that have different values, different threats, different functions as well. It is not enough only to indicate who the proxies are, but we need to understand how these proxies have been established and how are they used. So that is why I would like to concentrate on two processes. So the empowerment process, and also the second process that I would like to talk about is the deployment process. So here we're talking about the strategies whereby Iran uses power, strength in order to achieve geopolitical aims and ends. And here we're talking about a number of proxies such as the Houthis and Hezbollah. So the first thing that I would like to talk about is that Iran does not have one specific methodology. So it deploys a kind of a dual method. So we have pragmatism in terms of alliance, and also we have partnership. So this is a partnership that is very deep with ideological proxies. And here we're talking about the example of Hezbollah that I would like to talk about. And also I would like to shine light on the changes that have happened in the Middle East. And we have the pragmatic alliance, which is a tactical investment, which is long-term, that is done or concluded with a number of allies for a specific mission, such as the Houthis, for instance. So I would like to talk about the strategies of empowerment in order to make a proxy. And also we have a functional strategy in how the proxy is used. And we have a number of variables where we try to assess the strategies after October 2023. Let's talk about the first process, empowerment. Let's try to respond to the following question. How does Iran build its proxies? Here we see the disparity between the two main components. We have Hezbollah that enjoyed a comprehensive, deep, multidimensional strategy to create an entity which is similar to a state. So the linkage was based on the ideological component, wilayat al-faqih, an absolute loyalty that made the relationship move from a partnership into a kind of complementarity between the two. And this has led to the establishment of a military arsenal. So we're talking here about an organic kind of relationship. So hundreds of millions of dollars are invested not only for the military establishment of Hezbollah, but also to have a large number of services in terms of schools and hospitals, and also to give them a political and diplomatic kind of cover to be an entity that has hegemony within the state of Lebanon, and also to try to establish what is called a strategic asset that is self-sufficient and that can achieve very complex and intricate duties. And the strategy of the empowerment of Houthis was very selective from the ideological perspective. So there is no completed agreement in terms of ideology. It was based on commonalities in terms of slogans that are against or not loyal to the US and other countries. Militarily, Iran did not move to establish a military. So we're talking about the use of certain weapons, and also financially, the funding was very limited. The Houthis mainly rely on their own local resources, and this alleviates the burden from Iran. Politically, they have given them a media platform, but they do not enjoy the similar capital that Hezbollah had enjoyed. So the objective is different here. So we're talking here about a tactical asset, effective, yes, but not as costly as Hezbollah is, that can create some strategic chaos. The second component, which is the functional strategy when it comes to the use of the proxy. So this can be translated as a result of the pivotal change between the two. So Hezbollah was used in very, very important matters. I'm not going to go into many details because I would like to reach the second part very quickly. So the main function is strategic deterrence, which is very much advanced. So it has been considered as the first line of defense for Iran, their duty to deter any direct attack on Iran. The second duty is a kind of a regional intervention power. As an example, we have Syria to protect the allies of the axis of resistance. Hezbollah, very important and cannot be sacrificed. But the Houthis have been deployed in other kind of duties, such as a kind of a war of attrition to put pressure, and they have been used as a geopolitical point of pressure in order to threaten the different passageways in order to give Iran a card for threatening the ones they want to threaten. And also we have another point, which is the new variables, which has led to the assessment of the deployment strategy after October 2023. And this leads us to the incidents that have happened since then. So the incidents and the confrontation between Iran and Israel has imposed on Tehran the need to reassess, to revisit its strategy with its proxies. When it comes to the deployment of Hezbollah. So the unprecedented attack by Israel that has targeted the commanders and leaders of Hezbollah, and also the attempt by the military establishment and the political leaders to demilitarize Hezbollah. So this was very, very costly when it comes to Iran. This has led to a change in the deployment strategy, particularly when we talk about Hezbollah, which is one of the most important allies. So now they are moving from kind of offensive, advanced defense. So as a result of that, the Houthis are different from Hezbollah. So they have become a tool for pressure, and also they have become a wing for attack. And this shows the depth that Iran enjoys in the region and that it can rely on in certain matters. So the strategy of Iran is not one harmonious strategy when it comes to its proxies. It differs from one component or entity to another. So that is why we have this dual kind of system that cannot be simplistically looked at as one network of proxies that can manage escalation or carry out offensive or defensive acts. We're talking about an effective strategy. So that is why any strategy to respond to this Iranian strategy should be very distinctive, very compounded, and very much knowledgeable of this particularity. And also, can continuous pressure on Hezbollah lead to its erosion as a strategic asset? Can the pragmatic ally in Yemen, can it become, after some time, a strategic ally and proxy? Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
We want to make sure. Our next presenter is Mr. Ebrahim Meraji, who's a lecturer in the Central Tehran branch of Islamic Azad University. He also serves as the director of the U.S. Middle East Studies Department at the Center for Middle East Scientific Research and Strategic Studies in Tehran. He holds a PhD in International Relations and Political Science from Islamic Azad University and is the author of a number of publications.
Well, thank you so much. I've heard so much reasonable these 2 days, and I hope I can add something to it. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of this conference for inviting me to be here, and it is really a great honor for me to be here. And a special thank to Professor Kamrava and his colleagues for their efforts to manage and organize this amazing conference. My paper is titled Neoclassical Realism and Iran's Proxy Strategy, a cost-benefit analysis. Since the Islamic Revolution of 1979, the Islamic Republic of Iran has faced regional hostility, largely because its revolutionary ideology was perceived as a threat by neighboring states. In response, Tehran developed a unique foreign policy strategy. relying heavily on non-state actors and resistant movements such as, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Houthis in Yemen, and Jihad and Hamas in Palestine. Over the decades, these groups became Iran's principal instruments of influence across the Middle East. But as my paper argues, the regional context has changed dramatically since October 7, 2023. And even more, so following the 12-day war between Iran and Israel, in June this year. These events have forced Tehran to reassess whether its proxy-based strategy remains viable under today's conditions. My analysis is grounded in neoclassical realism, a theory that combines the systemic pressure emphasized by structural realism with domestic-level variables such as leadership perceptions, ideology, and economic constraints. Unlike neorealism, which sees states as black boxes reacting uniformly to international pressures, neoclassical realism allows us to understand why states facing similar external conditions behave differently. So for Iran, ideology, regime survival, and the role of institutions like the Revolutionary Guard filter external pressures and shape policy outcomes. Historically, Iran's reliance on proxies offered three key advantages. Number one, it provided deterrence without direct confrontation. Two, it connected Iran with popular regional sentiments, especially around the Palestine issues. And three, it gave Tehran plausible deniability and strategic depth at relatively low cost. However, this model is under strain today. Israel's intensified military campaign, the collapse of the Assad's regime in Syria, and U.S. and Israel strikes on Houthis in Yemen, and of course, the June 2025 direct conflict between Iran and Israel, determine Iran's regional posture. To illustrate this change, let me highlight one critical point, maybe. From a scale of 100, 0 to 100, 0 being the least powerful and 100 being the most powerful, I would say that Iran in 2023, before the October 7, Iran was 100. And Iran today is either 50 or 60. Its power has significantly diminished. The most important part of this decline is, of course, the 12-day war between Iran and Israel. But before that was the overthrow of Assad's regime in Syria. The overthrow of Assad's regime in Syria was to Iran what the Iranian Revolution was to the United States in 1979, because Iran lost. It's the most important state ally in the Middle East. I emphasize on this phrase, a state ally, because most of Iranian friends and allies are non-state actors. But Syria under the Assad regime had different stories. The other Iranian allies, the other groups such as Hezbollah and Houthis, you know, their power had been weakened now, but definitely is not out. They are not out because they are indigenous force. They represent a significant population of their countries. But you know, after the October 7, 2023, as I said, their power has diminished, but they are still alive. For example, about the Hezbollah in Lebanon, it can go back to the political arena and play an important role in Lebanese politics. But I have to tell you that in my assessment, Iran in the future, Iran will never count on these groups as a major force to retaliate against Israel. Iran will rely on its own capabilities, its own military capabilities, and its own missile and drone activities. So, you know, at the same time, Iran faces several domestic economic challenges. Sanctions, inflations, and of course, mismanagement have eroded the government's ability to finance foreign policy at its, you know, previous scale. You know, public opinion increasingly question why resources are sent abroad while the economic hardship mount at home. Internationally, on the other hand, internationally, the return of Donald Trump to the White House in, you know, beginning of 2025 has brought back the maximum pressure campaign. You know, Washington alignment with Israel and its military participation in the June 2025 conflict has further reduced Iran's strategic flexibility. So, what are Iran's options? I identify two plausible scenarios. Number one, continuation of the current strategy, trying to rebuild and strengthen proxies like Hezbollah and Houthis, despite the higher financial and political costs. And number two, gradual adjustment, maintaining some level of support for these groups, but you know, recalibrating the intensity and method, and you know, placing greater emphasis on political engagement and maybe diplomacy. Neither path means abandoning Iran's ideological commitments, but both require acknowledging that the environment today is far more hostile, costly, and uncertain than it was just a few years ago. In conclusion, Iran's regional strategy is at the crossroads. Neoclassical realism helps us see that this is not just about external military pressure, nor just about internal politics. It is the interaction between the two. Iran's future will likely reflect both continuity and adaptation, holding onto the ideological framework of resistance while recalibrating tactics to survive in a more challenging environment. I know that you're all ear to listen Professor Kamrava's speech, so I try to shorten my speech. Thank you very much for your attention.
Well, that was a great way to conclude the presentations of our panelists. Let's open it up to questions, but I ask that you please ask a question rather than make a comment. and keep it concise so we have plenty of time. There are mics. Are there any questions? Yes, sir. The gentleman up here, if you just wait a minute, they're getting the mics. Thank you. Right here. Yes. Go ahead, sir.
A very nice presentation from both our panelists. My question is actually to both of you so that I get the perspective from Iranian side as well as a non-Iranian side, so that, from an external side. My question is that is the Iranian Houthi relationship, the way it was structured, as you very kindly explained, was that a miscalculation? Could that have been a much more effective force from the perspective of Iran in terms of countering Israel, especially after October 7? I'd like to get your perspectives on that.
Let's take a couple more, if there are any. Yes, sir. Right up here in front. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for both presentation. I have one question from, Dr. Meraji. In the last part of your presentation, you talk about the two scenarios. Iran's continuing supporting the proxy groups, and the second is Iran's eager for political engagement in the regime. From your viewpoint, you think Iran will choose which one? Still wants to support these proxy groups, or it wants to actually change maybe its approach and try to engage politically in the regime?
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Dr. Sinkari.
Thank you. I want to ask Dr. Meraji. Yes, Iran at crossroads, Iranian foreign strategy at crossroads, but not only Iranian foreign strategy, the whole Middle East is at crossroads. So Iran should revise or reconsider or should calculate the directions of Middle East. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? And one last question in the back.
شكرا للسيد جواد القاسمي في خطاب مختصر
Mr. Jawad al-Qasimi for your presentation. My question to Mr. Jawad, can we consider the changing strategic situation in the Middle East because of Iran's dealings with its proxies like Hezbollah, which, for example, who are attacking Israel or standing up to Israel, or Houthis trying to control the sea lanes? So what can we consider next from Iran in this regard?
شكرا.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The question pertaining to the relationship between Iran and the Houthis, was it a miscalculation? No, we cannot say it was, but it is the result of the situation and the circumstances in the region that nobody could forecast and predict these developments. And the other side of the coin is we can say that Hezbollah is finished and Iran is no longer relying on its proxies. This is wrong. Hezbollah has not been finished, and the Hezbollah could have taken part in the latest round of confrontation between Israel and Iran, but certain conditions in the region dictated that Hezbollah shouldn't, and Iran didn't want to lose this strategic ally. Also, so far as the Houthis are concerned, their geographical location and their ability to absorb shocks and strikes enabled them to continue the struggle and the fight. So Iran would try to benefit as much as possible from the Houthis, and at the same time, Iran will try to protect and preserve Hezbollah maybe for.
Well, thank you so much for your comments and your question. Well, the reality is that Iran has plenty of time to think and plan for this moment. Hardship, economic hardship has faced, Iran has faced in this situation. But, a couple of years ago, they think and plan for this moment to change their strategy in the Middle East, I think. But, they stick in this, pursuing the strategy that began, some decades ago. So we are not in their shoes. This choice is up to them. But I know that the most important priority of any state is survival. So the change is necessity, but I don't know whether they chose this way or not.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Thank you very much. Let me say a couple of things by way of conclusion. But before I try and wrap up what my colleagues have said and the wisdom that we have been benefiting from over the last 2 days, before I forget, I really do need to thank the entire team that put this event together. All the panelists have been very kind and have thanked me, but it actually is not me who's put this entire conference together. I would be remiss if I didn't thank my colleague, Fatemeh Salari, who's been absolutely invaluable. Also terrific has been Motaz Al-Nazir, with whom many of you have been in touch. I want to thank my colleagues here at the Arab Center for Research and Policy Studies, who've kindly moderated, the volunteers who've been very kind. They've been the heroes behind the scenes, and of course, the AV people who've made us all look good, and the translators who have helped us understand one another. So our sincere thanks to all of them. So over the last 2 days, we have come to realize, or we have been reminded rather, that 2025 was indeed a critical juncture for Iranian foreign policy. We are in a moment of transition when Iran's foreign policy and Iranian security policy are changing. We just heard that. And we have also heard a number of other factors that have gone into this. I think for those of us who are old enough to remember the Iran-Iraq war, we remember the lingering legacy of that war for Iranian policymakers and how that war, the Iran-Iraq war, informed Iranian policymaking for generations since the war ended in 1988. I think it's fair to say that the so-called 12-day war will continue to inform the assumptions of Iranian policymakers for generations to come, for a number of years to come. And I don't think we should unintentionally de-emphasize the importance of what has been transpiring in Iran over the last couple of months. Of course, 2025 isn't over yet. Iran has a chief policymaker in the form of a supreme leader who's very advanced in age, and all of us at some point have to meet our makers, even if we're supreme leaders. So probably a leadership succession that is even more fundamental in consequences is going to come sooner or later, but of course that is quite important. So far, a number of events have happened that we've been talking about that have had drastic consequences for Iran's foreign policy. Israel's war on Iran, 12 days of unrelenting attacks, and of course, Iran retaliating. Iran's attack on Al Udeid, which is the headquarters, Al Udeid base, the American base, which is the headquarters of Central Command, United States Central Command, and of course, Israel's attack on Qatar last week, and the consequences of all of these events. Now, we have heard for good reason and with logical reason that there's been a change in Iran's means of deterrence. For those who are not directly familiar with Iranian foreign policy, deterrence has been a central preoccupation of Iranian policymakers for some time, and either establishing or re-establishing after an attack. Re-establishing deterrence has been quite important. Also, a lingering question in the minds of Iranian policymakers right now is what to do with the nuclear program. We have actually heard over the last 2 days compelling arguments on both sides that either Iran ought to withdraw from the non-proliferation treaty, or the negative consequences for Iran's national interests if Iran were indeed to withdraw from the NPT, and the consequences of negative interaction with the International Atomic Energy Agency. We have also discussed over the last couple of days a number of important contextual factors within which Iran's foreign policy and transformations to that foreign policy have been unfolding. Of course, there's an ongoing genocide in Gaza with no end in sight. We have an Israeli prime minister that is unhinged and feels empowered to attack any country at will. And we have an American president, a superpower, who defies rational description. I don't think any of us can rationally describe Donald Trump's thinking or his actions. We have also been reminded about the ebb and flow of sectarianism. Here in Qatar, in the Arabian Peninsula, for those of you who are visiting us, we have been living in the heart of sectarianism. This has been the epicenter since the Arab Spring, starting in places like Bahrain and eastern province of Saudi Arabia, reverberating across the region. And it appears as if, with a rapprochement between Iran and Saudi Arabia, we're seeing a steady decline in the force and compelling nature of that sectarianism, and how that sectarianism is going to have consequences in terms of threat perceptions of regional leaders, how it will impact foreign policy making and assumptions about the other. Of course, we have to wait and see. We've been also reminded about nuances within Iran's relations with the states of the GCC. Correctly, we were reminded that Iran does not have a single policy towards the GCC. An Iranian policy, for example, or Iran's relations with Oman have been fundamentally different or as compared to Iran's relations with the United Arab Emirates or with Saudi Arabia. And those relations are not just country-specific, but there have been variations from time to time. I think it's also important to remember that the Gulf Cooperation Council is far from a robust organization. Right now, we're at a moment in which there's been a common threat. And just a couple of days ago here in the capital of Qatar, we had grand declarations and the invoking of Article 4 of the GCC Charter that says an attack on one member is an attack on all the other members. But let's remember that from 2017 to 2021, the Gulf Cooperation Council was on life support. And members of the GCC were barred from talking to each other. Some members, Saudi Arabia, of course, was going to dig a canal to turn the Qatari Peninsula into a Qatari island, if you remember. So I don't think we can, GCC as an organization comes together in moments of common threat, and then we saw that from 2017 to 2021, it turned on each other. And of course, we have to be mindful that this is a multinational institution that is still evolving, and in grand historical terms, it is still in its early days. And of course, whether or not substantive and tangible moves towards meaningful integration take place is a question that only time can answer. We were also reminded, very importantly, that Iran's foreign policy remains fundamentally ideological. We heard about the ethos of resistance. We heard the importance of heroic flexibility and strategic patience, and how these remain pillars of a foreign policy that is both pragmatic, yet at the same time deeply ideological. We were reminded of the impact of the European Union as a factor in Iran's relations with the GCC. And of course, we were reminded of the importance of sanctions and of Iran's relations with the specific countries of the GCC, and also with Yemen, with Iraq, with Hezbollah, with Kurdish autonomous government, and with others. I want to end with making a couple of general comments that goes to the heart of why it is that here at the Arab Center for Policy Studies and Research, we established the Iranian Studies Unit. The assumption behind the establishment of the Iranian Studies Unit has been and continues to be to provide a forum for dialogue and exchange of ideas. We all know that scholars are not immune to the consequences of political currents and competition among countries and policymakers. We, academics, are all humans, and we're subject to broader trends that occur within our environment. Interestingly, we see this in Iranian and non-Iranian perspectives on international relations. And over the last 2 days, we've been subject to these Iranian and non-Iranian perspectives on international relations. Probably the truth is somewhere in between. Let me elaborate what that means. By and large, and this is not meant to point fingers at anybody, but by and large, as someone who's been studying Iranian foreign policy and its consequences on Arab world, and as someone who's been studying the literature, oftentimes the literature and the analysis coming out of Iran on Iranian foreign policy de-emphasizes the sectarian nature of Iranian foreign policy. It sees Iranian foreign policy as innately benign and guided by national interests. And it often overlooks the deep fear and mistrust that Arab countries have towards Iran. It either explains them away or says these fears are baseless and can be set aside. Conversely, non-Iranian perspectives on Iranian foreign policy often see Iran's intentions as uniquely nefarious. Iran is often seen as responsible for all regional ills. It is seen as having tentacles everywhere. It there was a time when we heard Iran controls 4 Arab capitals. It is seen as an octopus, evoking the analogy or the slogan used by former Israeli Prime Minister Bennett, who said, let's go after the head of the octopus. And again, I think the truth is somewhere in between. Neither side, I hate to say, is completely innocent. And neither side is a sole victim. In international relations, shades of gray, we all know, often overwhelm black and white distinctions. My hope is that in this conference, we've been able to dissect some of this gray area, some of this truth in between. And I hope that in future conferences and through our continuous endeavors here at the Iranian Studies Unit and elsewhere, we can provide a forum for dialogue, exchange of ideas that doesn't necessarily affix blame, as policymakers are so good at doing, but understands the shades of gray and those nuances. Thank you very much. Thank you.